Corsi, I'm here. Everybody on the board?
Good morning,
Good morning, Doctor.
How's everybody today?
All right, we're just sitting here. There seemed to be a pointing back towards Sandy Hook and how the money went. That's kind of what we're focusing on at the moment. If you want to go a different direction, lead the way.
Well, first let's get the link again. I want to put it up here on the live stream, and so we can get people to come on over on the Twitter, so we get people to come and join us. So somebody will post the. Here we go. Grab this. Let's see. Has anybody posted the live stream here?
Give me 1 second.
Right.
Yeah, do y'all have that link with the live at the end that Pam
That's the
always
one I
points us
want.
to?
Yeah, that's the one I want. With the live at the end of it.
I'm
There
not
you
sure
go.
where to access that.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, here we go. Great. Super. Yeah, that's good. And how's the live stream been so far today? Is it strong and the signal good?
So far, no breaks.
Great. Well, we're going to probably take some steps to improve that. I know it's likely the number of people on and the fact that we're just using equipment that everybody has. I mean, this is not a well-funded effort. It's kind of a shoestring effort by everybody involved. So bear with us and we'll upgrade equipment as we can. I want to just post, I'm on the live chat. And I've got a few things I want to talk about early on. So let's get everybody here and get this notice out.
Good morning, Dr. Corsi.
Good morning. And today's February 24th, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and it's 10 a.m.
Dr. Corsi,
Yes.
last night I posted some prayers in a different Discord. If you look on the list there towards the top, there's one that's just got the capital letter P. If you need a moment to stop there, more than welcome.
All right, I'll definitely take a look at the prayer. We need all the prayers we can get. From last night, okay. Plus school shootings plus Scalia. Okay, let's see, and I want to make sure, there we go. That's up now and posted, and we're ready. Let me take a look at the, I want to make sure I've got a good read here in the I see everybody over here in the post. Good morning. I'm saying, good. It sounds clear today. Excellent. That's good. I want to see if one person is on now listening, and then I've got some things I want to make sure we drop right away. Hold on.
Is Pamphlet or Brain still with us? No, Brain's not in here.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, we have,
I think Pam is monitoring, but he's not able to type and communicate.
Well,
right
my point is, Dr. Corsi, we don't have access to the update the screen for the live stream. So whatever we go over, we'll need to share a link in the live chat.
okay, now I'm going to share a couple things to begin with. Person I wanted to make sure was on just texted me and is on listening. First thing I want to do is I want to make sure everybody has seen this on Scalia. I know I've gotten requests. I put it up the other day. And I'm going to kind of warn everybody to start with. This is going to be kind of a rough session today. We're going to go into some topics that I've been thinking about overnight that we're definitely going to have to tackle. And I'm not going to sugarcoat any of these. These are going to all be pretty rough and pretty tumble, but we're going to have to deal with them and tackle them. This first article is one I'm publishing on I previously have done this. If everybody will take a look at that article, it's an article about, says pedophiles down under, tag Billy Graham. Everybody see it?
Yeah.
Now, if you pull that article up, what it's about the whole expose, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm presenting it because it pulls together some aspects of Scalia's murder that have not been clear and may not be clear unless we begin pursuing some of these angles. According to this, the ranch he was at was a pedophile ranch, this Cibolo Creek Ranch, run by a guy who was known, they called it here a rent-a-boy ranch. And what's discussed is that Scalia was there and was murdered by a 13-year-old boy he was having sex with, where the child evidently didn't like his rough approach to rape and slit Scalia's throat. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because, and it's going to be shocking to a lot of people, and Billy Graham is mentioned in this, and it ties into the Bohemian Club in downtown San Francisco and Bohemian Grove. And it keeps scrolling down, child sacrifice and trafficking in Holland. And it begins bringing us down a dark alley that Scalia may have spent his last hours with this secret society of elite hunters that were, in fact, hunting boys. And it's certainly shocking not only to think about Judge Scalia and the others that this aspect of their lives may merit investigation. Again, I'm going to emphasize I don't know that it's true at this point. But Scalia did not have an autopsy. The family did not let the body be seen. It was cremated. And there was no real independent. They said he died with a pillow over his head. And he was healthy when he went to that ranch. And it's been very difficult to understand what happened to him at that ranch. And so this is what I'm putting out here because I think as we get into the pedophilia at a deeper level, which is, I think, going to be important very quickly, if not now, we're going to have to tackle some things like this. Now, I want some comment on this one, and let's hear what people have to say about it. Then I have one more I want to present before we really get into the decoding. So
that goes back to the post that he says, "Who do you trust?" I mean, you get somebody that is at the level that some of these people. But
or by any number of things, the political correctness around Scalia, of course, his Supreme Court decisions we admire as conservatives, and a number of these people we're going to find have this aspect to them of this pedophilia, this bizarre attraction to young boys. And again, I want to make sure everybody knows that I'm not 100% sure this is true, but I think it's going to end up being true by a number of people, if not Scalia, a number of people that we, kind of wish it weren't true about. And I'm going to go ahead.
I think that's an important point. It's disturbing to hear this about anyone, but it's even worse when it's somebody that you look up to and you trust. And I think that's a good point. We have to have the courage to be able to, or at least be willing to look at the subject objectively and honestly.
And I want to bring it up in the context too of the school shootings, which we're going to be discussing in terms of who do you trust? The children have got to trust the teachers. Well, what if the teachers are all members of the teachers union and they're all leftists, and their whole deal is to indoctrinate your children into a LGBT agenda or some other form of beliefs that you find abhorrent, And they believe these things ought to be taught to children at the grade school level, as well as what President Trump said yesterday, conditioned to go through, shooter exercises. So you get a kid in kindergarten and say, well, first of all, we want to talk to you about having two mommies or two daddies that are the same sex. And then, by the way, somebody may come in here and want to kill you. So I'm thinking to myself, if I'm a kid in that school, first of all, I thought it to begin with, before any of this nonsense, I'd say, I don't need to be here. What kid in their right mind is going to stay there? And if the kid stays there, you've got conditioning 101 already started. What else do you want to teach this kid? What else do you want to brainwash them, put into their head? Who do you trust? This is going to be a major issue as we explore these today, and it's someone here. I'm just trying to get as many of these comments as I can. It's tough to get all the comments. Please bear with us. We do miss some, and I think sometimes people in the live chat feel we're neglecting them. I'm trying to pick up everybody I can, but it's tough.
Dr. Corsi?
Someone is saying, I want to get this one first for a second. Somebody says, let's be very clear. Pedophilia is not exclusive to men. Women are very much in pedophilia, or these perversions we're going to be talking about. It's just like men and women can both be violent. Don't doubt that a woman can be violent. Get between a mother and her child, and you'll understand how women can be violent. Yes, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Your comment?
No, I was just going to ask. I've been taking care of some stuff for Pam on the side here, but what is the source? You might have mentioned it already. I didn't catch it for this particular information on the ranch and what was going on there.
It comes from a blog, and I have not been able to go through the source in any great detail. It talks about a couple of the victims, and it talks about Bohemian Grove and some of the other things I can associate it with. I know some of the information in here is accurate. I don't know that all the information is accurate. And the part about Scalia is particularly shocking and was new. But we're going to have to understand is that if we're going to talk about pedophilia, and we're going to talk about the abuse of children and all the rest of it, you're going to deal at the presidential level with some things you don't want to know about, and some things that are going to be disturbing to everybody, including those who looked up to the Bush family and all the rest of it. Family at this point are pedophiles, but it's going to be a topic that as we go down this, we're going to be exploring in terms of a lot of the stuff that was going on back to Reagan and before. And there's going to be a lot in terms of how the elite behave and operate internationally, that has a fundamentally different idea of sexuality and morals than we are taught, or that the average person believes from a moral education, a Christian Judeo tradition. A lot of this stuff is going to be shocking.
I agree. One other thing that I wanted to ask is, you mentioned that this information is fairly new. Do we have any info on the ranch prior to the Scalia incident? Now, I know that the ranch was very heavily connected to the Democrats and provided a lot of funding and things like that. But do we have any other information that might that we can source, that we can dig into, that would indicate that they were also implicated early on as far as being a pedophilia center?
The ranch has been discussed in that context before, and these hunting groups and these elite parties where the men get together and supposedly are going out hunting and playing cards, and a boys' weekend out. Many of them are just hunting, and many of them are a cover for other activities that are in this category, pedophilia and other bizarre behavior. But this is something that we're going to have to look at. People are saying, we look at these people as white hats, and it's shocking to think that it's shocking to think that there may be a dark underside to this, but we're going to have to deal with this because the nature of the corruption is going to be that the who do you trust is a very important question, because you may be trusting people who are abusing the fact that you trust them in order to achieve an agenda quite contrary to anything you'd want to believe in. And the other issues here with the MK Ultra and the exploitation of drugs, the psychoanalysis of children who are then given heavy drugs is another subject I want to get into today. And I want to touch on some information that I've gotten recently. I'm going to drop this into the live chat as well and put it right here. Okay, now if you open this up, and I think you can, it did open up in the live chat, you can begin to see it right there. What this is someone found this, and someone credible who I have known to produce very credible research has found this advertisement in a Craigslist for needing crisis actors for a mass casualty event to take place. Now, exact address will be given on 3/2/18, and the event will be held on 3/4/18, and they're paying $1,000. Now, again, I don't know if this is a hoax. In other words, this might be dropped in order for us all to report on it, and then everybody gets excited about it, and it turns out that it was all a government plan to make us look stupid. But I want to also drop another event that's going to be going on in Houston in the same period of time, and I'm going to do that right now. Right here. Okay, and there's you'll see the event. And the event is one that is going to be a Christian celebration. It's a winter tour. I've got a lot of stars there. It's going to be, a big event. Platinum selling and Billboard winning music, stars, etc. Some of the best and biggest names in Christian music. Now, some of you are down in Houston, some of you are down in Texas, and these are the kinds of things I'd like to find out more about. Is this legitimate? Is there this crisis actors group? See, I don't understand why we need crisis actors. Why do they exist at all? What's their job? Isn't a crisis bad enough? Do we need actors to come in and make it worse? Why do we need crisis actors? I think the whole job category is suspect.
Well, I would just say on one level, I agree with you. On another level, there are training events and stuff for first responders and FEMA crisis response units. I know Q has brought up suspicion of the Red Cross. But,
well, in other words, see, I agree there's legitimate training for first responders, but you don't call them crisis actors. It's the same as we saw with that little kids. There's probably legitimate purposes for massage, therapeutic massage of children. But the idea of teaching large numbers of people how to massage children is somehow merits another angle that needs to be closely watched, and to examine exactly why are we massaging these children. Now, someone here mentions, I see in the comments that cognitive dissonance still remains strong. I want to explain what cognitive dissonance is in psychology. Cognitive dissonance is when you get information that somehow very seriously challenges your worldview or your information you previously held. It's hard to reconcile it. There's a tendency to want to avoid the problem by dismissing the new information as false, or it's just too threatening. The only way to deal with cognitive dissonance is when the training you have to go through if you want to be an intelligence operative or think like one, is that the cognitive dissonance is a sign that the information causing the dissonance needs to be paid particularly close attention to, because maybe that's the information that is the most important. Maybe the one that's been trying to have been suppressed earlier on. Now, crisis actors are people who can be trained to fill the agenda of whoever is running the drill. They want people to pretend and role play so the drill appears to be real world, or they're trained to have a certain narrative that they're going to come on and apply to the incident. See, when something occurs, if you've ever been in a crisis situation of any kind, and car wreck, shooting, any kind of violence, robbery, a fire, anything that, first of all, for most human beings, it's confusing. You don't really know what's going on, okay? And you don't have a clue necessarily how to respond. It's why a lot of people freeze and wait for somebody to come and save them, and may burn to death in a building that's burning down because they didn't take the first steps they could have taken to escape. Now, even if they do escape, even if they get out and take the right steps, they still don't immediately know what happened. Now, in the first few minutes of any kind of a shooting, crisis, or whatever, is your best evidence. Your police, or what you've got to get, because the evidence is going to start getting contaminated almost immediately, and you can't totally preserve a crime scene. But when you do get into a crime scene, there's going to be evidence that doesn't fit together with the narrative that you would think. In other words, first question is, how did this fire start? You know, if you can't find, if the electricity is all good, you can't find a defect in the building. And from the beginning, a good police investigator has arson at the top of the list. Let's dismiss arson. Same thing with in any shooting of a husband or wife, who's the immediate suspect? First suspect. Anybody know?
Spouse.
Spouse. Spouse is always number one. Now, police may not tell you that. They may come in very sympathetically, want to know from the spouse what happened and share their grief. But in a Columbo-like style, any trained police investigator is interrogating that spouse as a suspect to begin with, because that's the person closest to the one who was killed, and people don't tend to kill people they don't know, and people who are intensely attached to another human being are the ones who often experience kind of a love-hate phenomenon, and it's easy to turn. Now, the reason I'm going through this in such detail is I want to point out something that we're going to talk about today in the Q post. And that's what Q, I think, is doing, what's going to happen much more rapidly. The way to, this is going to be fundamental, my book that's coming out is a key theme in it. My book is Killing the Deep State, and it'll be out soon here in March. Killing the Deep State. I'll post it in a bit. But the point is that you can't defeat propaganda with the truth. And that's what we're in a propaganda war right now. So they say there's Russian collusion. And Trump says there's no evidence of Russian collusion. It's not true. Well, the answer to that is you just haven't looked hard enough yet. We'll find it. We know it's there. We just have to look hard enough. We'll find it. Okay, now the way you are only going to be able to beat that is by a combination of new information. For instance, why is it that Hillary gave all this to the Russians? Is it the uranium? Is that collusion? And by the way, why is it that Mueller suppressed information of the bribery scheme from Russia during the time when CFIUS was voting to give Russia control of the uranium? I thought Mueller was a white hat. I mean, why would he suppress that information? And with regards to General Flynn, which FBI guy did he lie to? He lied to Strozik. Wasn't Strozik the one who was texting Lisa Page about how much Lisa Page and he hated Trump? And by the way, wasn't it Strozik who altered his 302, his interrogation report of the discussion with Flynn? And why did Comey go tell Congress that he looked at the record, he didn't think that Flynn had lied to Strozik? Now, with all that new information, you begin to question the narrative you were given at the first time. And what we've been told by Q in these posts, and I want to look at a couple here, just mention them a little out of order, but I wanted to, is number 814. Because what has happened here is that, well, let's look at 813 first. First, 812, you see the picture of the sheriff with Hillary Clinton. And I'm going to drop, by the way, where people can see all these QAnon posts so you can follow it along here.
Just to jump in a second, some of these different sites are being numbered differently for different people.
I know.
For me, that photo is 815, if anybody's...
Right. It's the one that was February 23rd at 1739, which would be about 5:40. And on February 23rd, so yesterday, the afternoon, and that was a picture of Hillary and this sheriff. Well, it turns out, and Q says, do you believe in coincidences? Q. Well, what happened yesterday and over the last couple of days, as QAnon, military intelligence, has looked at the narrative that was in the shooting, Q's begun dropping the information that's going to make everybody question what the shooting was all about. No, he hasn't said it was a staged event. He's just saying the sheriff looks awfully friendly to Hillary. Okay, now, shortly after this, it came out that it was not just the school guard, but 4 of his deputies didn't go inside. Yes.
While we were reading this stuff earlier, that D security firm came up several times on searches.
Yes.
Maybe these were not actual sheriffs. Maybe they were D security in sheriff's uniforms.
No, these were actual sheriff's deputies, because I believe the Coral Gables police, who did arrive and went right in, have also confirmed that they can't understand why the sheriff's deputies didn't go in. And if they had received training, police training on active shooters, the first thing you do when you get there is you don't wait to stage it for everybody to get together. If you're the first on the scene in an active shooter, you go in the school immediately with whatever weapons you have, and your goal is find the shooter and kill him. And you're not going to think about your safety or your threat. You have one goal in mind, and that is get in there and kill the shooter, and or neutralize him one way or the other. Stop the event, and killing him will be just fine. That will stop the event. You don't wait to stage for others to come in. And if these police had been given that training, my first suspicion is, and this is the next thing that'll be debated, did somebody give them a stand-down order? Are they told to wait? Okay, now, as we look at this incident, and Q is saying in 813, why school shootings? What is more precious than our children? Going to have a huge emotional pull. It's going to be a distraction event, and it's going to make the agenda a grab gun event. Okay, and then this D-security, which I'm still not sure what the D-security reference is. You may have figured that out better overnight. But that's the first part of that. The first question ends with the D-security line, and the point is that anyone knowing that deep state, you want to change the agenda from the 13 anemic, the Russians that Mueller was able to find is the only Russian collusion he's been able to account for so far. Well, a school shooting's going to change the agenda. It's good. It's the movie Wag the Dog. You know that. It's now been done so much. It's common knowledge in Washington that an event like this will change the agenda. Now, that doesn't mean yet that it was staged or pre-planned, but the point is made. The point is made that, yes, this is the kind of an event that would change the agenda, and surely the deep state wanted to change the agenda. Doesn't mean they staged the event. We're not there yet. Okay, so then I would go, why would locals go along with such a sick, organized event? Now, what does that mean? Now, you know, a lot of locals here in this town, and you saw them all in the CNN event, who were happy to be on that stage and asked to be disarmed. And that community is a particularly leftist community in Florida. And this sheriff and his deputies are particularly leftists, and they did nothing to go after this kid despite warnings. Now, the next thing you're going to find out, and I think it'll be coming out today, is that this district, this sheriff's area, was targeted by Brennan and Obama and Hillary to be packed with Hezbollah. And this district is going to have a lot of Hezbollah in it. Now, I suspect Q and the others may drop that sometime today. Now, the point I'm making, I want to make this point. The point is that, then I'll get some comments, but the point I want to make is, note that what we're doing here is we're changing the narrative. We're combating the propaganda. I didn't fall into the trap of saying this was a staged event and nobody was killed. So no, people were killed. The event really happened. There were shooters in there and kids got killed, 17 of them. But I'm asking deeper questions. I'm asking, why didn't the cops come in? I don't have an answer yet, but why didn't they? I'm asking, did they get a stand-down order? I don't know. Maybe they didn't, but I want to know. Why is this sheriff so in the bag for Democrats? And why didn't this sheriff do anything about this kid despite all the warnings? Now, I'm also going to ask another series of questions, and that is, how'd this kid get out of the school? Why did he go to a McDonald's restaurant? Why was he picked up walking to his home? Apparently, why did he talk to a student outside of the building who said she heard shooting in the building while he was talking to her? Now, I haven't said it was a staged event. I don't know. I'm just saying this information doesn't fit with what you just told me was this kid was in there with an AR-15 killing 17 kids. But yet I'm arresting him walking home after he had a McDonald's. I mean, was he hungry shooting the kids, or what was the deal? Usually people who commit this kind of a mass murder are so pumped up on adrenaline, they're not going to, go for a Big Mac and fries and a shake afterwards, and not in the immediate afterwards. And this kid was arrested and didn't look confused. Now, the reason I'm pointing this out is because in the very next post, the 814, different number, I'm sure it's the one that is 1846, Friday, February 23rd. So within 15 minutes of the previous post, Q saying, who do you think is leaking the information? Take a wild guess. Military intelligence is dropping this information because military intelligence knows it's fighting the deep state. And military intelligence is going to say, okay, we know how to fight propaganda. And we're going to fight it we're going to give you the crumbs, the details, and everybody needs to start investigating them because I want this question answered. Why did the deputies sit outside with their guns protecting themselves. That's not what they were trained to do.
Dr. Corsi, I think we've got a good lead from live chat.
Okay.
They gave me a link that went to a D-Security reference, which is a private security license in Florida.
Okay. Do we know if anyone in the incident was hired by D-Security?
No, I mean, everything that I've seen publicly has talked about the deputies, but I think that's maybe something we should dig into deeper later.
I think so. I think so.
To bring it up in context.
That's good. Thank you. Also, this Leslie Dehart over here, 3 men linked with Hezbollah have been accused of laundering money in Miami. Miami banks, fugitive who ran internet scams in South Florida linked to terror group Hezbollah. Jay Scott, notice that the hand of the deputy's wife in the photo in the Trump's page, hands shape M. I'll have to look at that. The John Wells YouTube. I have not seen the John Wells YouTube.
PC has something to say here. I'm going to read for her.
Yes.
No, so Ada has that. Sorry. I'm used to PC being the one that tells me to give me the voice. Anyway, his brother was put in a mental hospital for the Friday before. Then the shooting occurs. He is set to inherit $800,000 and his guardian petitioned for that money the day after the shooting.
Well, I mean, again, that's pretty convenient, isn't it?
Yeah, Dr. Corsi, the guardian, the male parent or foster parent is in former military intelligence, Army.
Who's military intelligence?
The foster father.
Okay.
That's in the article that somebody brought up a day and a half ago.
All right. Okay, now let's see here. I'm operating on the premise that 17 kids were killed, and that's all legit, and that's honest. You know, that's true. Even if we find information that's contrary to the official narrative, and what I'm attacking here is the official narrative. I want to know why we were given this narrative, because it's just after the fire burned down. Somebody said, oh, but you missed over here. There was this faulty electrical box you didn't see. I said, well, that's good. Who are you? He said, well, I'm the building owner. I just want to make sure you saw this faulty electric box over here. Okay, now, am I changing the narrative that it was a arson, or is this now an electrical fire? Well, I'm probably going to wonder now, what's the motivation of the building owner to point this out to me? Because see, as an investigator, it's very much like my father told me when I was a child in Washington, and I heard a politician lie to him. I said, he just lied to you, Dad. I said, son, they all lie to you. Your job is not to determine they lied to you. Your job is whatever they said to you, figure out why they're lying to you. That's all that makes any difference. Why did he lie? They all lie. For each one of them, you got to figure out why. Why did he tell you that? And what my dad was saying was, you're hearing an official narrative. That guy told you something he wanted you to believe, which is his construction of reality. Maybe why we needed to do a defense appropriation or whatever the issue was. And you got to look behind what he said to say, why did he say that? What was his motivation? And a narrative that you're given of an incident, especially when it's a official narrative that is supported by a CNN stage presentation. I'm saying to myself from the beginning, I'm watching theater here. This isn't news, this is theater. This is the creation of a narrative. Let's see if we can pick up a few more comments while we're going through these. Same thing I really started out with Scalia. You know, we've been given theater of who Scalia is. Devout Catholic, conservative. You know, okay, that's great. I'm going to go with that narrative until I can prove or have the information otherwise. But I'm going to understand that that's a narrative, and it can be challenged by alternative narratives. And if I'm investigating it, I'm going to start with, now wait a minute, why didn't we have an autopsy here? Because in death situations like that, an autopsy would be expected. And by the way, how come we had a cremation of the body so fast? I mean, this is not consistent with the narrative that he had a heart attack to me. And so I begin immediately questioning the narrative.
Since we're
Do
back
I
on
believe, and people are saying, do I believe the blogger who did the post about Scalia? I don't begin these things believing anybody. I'm taking that information and seeing if that information will check out. If I can validate it, if there's a basis for it. Even a criminal, a hardened criminal might tell me something that's true of value. I'm going to look at the information. I'll come around to figuring out why the people told me that information. But first, I'm going to take the information and find out if it's true or not. So it doesn't matter whether I believe the blogger or not. I want to know if this homosexual encounter, pedophilia encounter is a consistent explanation for the way the death was reported of Scalia. And I begin by taking it seriously or worthy of examination. Not yet worthy of belief, but worthy of examination. Because it does begin to explain why there wasn't an autopsy. If the throat was slit and an investigator comes into here and starts figuring out that this is a pedophilia farm, and that's the narrative that becomes the proven narrative, and I'm the Scalia family, I don't want to take any chance that could happen. So I've got to explain to myself to begin with Scalia, why no autopsy, why cremated? Those are my red flags. Just like here in this incident, my red flags are, why did the police not run into the building? Why did this one witness tell us outside that she was talking to the shooter and that she heard shots inside? If that's the case, it's not consistent with the kid being the shooter.
Dr. Corsi.
Yes.
So when we look at timelines and evidence, I'm thinking back to the judge that was just recently arrested trying to go south towards the Mexican border in Texas. Was that in the same area as that ranch?
I don't know. I don't know the incident with the judge. I'd have to see something about it, so I just don't know. Somebody's posting here, the information includes Podesta's Wet Works email. Yes, that also was very, very suspicious because Podesta had a email about Wet Works in relationship to the Scalia murder, and he may have even had it prior to the murder, as I recall.
The email in question was on the Tuesday before the body was discovered, late Friday night, early Saturday morning. And I'm sitting here looking for that because there was something about that didn't sit right. The timing was off. And if you look at what happened later that summer when there was the tarmac meeting, if there's a quid pro quo going to be offered for compliance from Loretta Lynch, and they're using this does not necessarily document mens rea that she knew in advance that she was going to offer this, but maybe she needed to. So I'm just trying to figure out how do those two fit together?
Again, we don't know. And what we have to do is we have to get Scalia's email and start analyzing it, start figuring out when he said it, why he said it, what he meant. It's hard to teach people to be good investigators. Don't come to conclusions fast. You got maybe a dozen hypotheses in your mind, any one of which could be the explanation, plus others you're not thinking about. The point of an investigation is not to come to a conclusion. It's to evaluate the evidence so that you can come to a conclusion. And you've got to go through a very thorough process of evaluating the evidence. It's meticulous. It's like Q says. You've got to do the proofs. You've got to really go back through and pick up all the clues. You've got to look and question everything. Let's see, the Army this is from Buffalo Gal, please see information from Army intelligence on Florida Marquis reporting on Hezbollah in South Florida. Nicholas Cruz was vulnerable, recruited by them, weapons carrier. They did hit. Okay, now see again, I think that's an issue that we have to investigate. But just because they were Hezbollah, it doesn't mean that they did the shooting. Don't come to quick conclusions. Also, we have now some evidence that Cruz was evidently expressing admiration for ISIS. Now, what was that all about? Okay, so again, we're in the process right now of looking through it. Somebody said that even if Scalia was murdered, doesn't mean he was a pedophile. Well, that's a possibility. But if he's going to be at this ranch and that's what's going on at the ranch, and a 13-year-old slits his throat, I'm not assuming they were discussing Shakespeare. Lots of folks accusing Scalia of being a pedophile. No, we're not smearing Scalia. We're investigating discrepancies over the reporting of his death and facts that don't fit together. And that's what, if we're going to be investigators, I mean, people who are in here are trolls or want to do, I mean, you can't stand it. If you're not ready to investigate these things, you don't have to participate.
Dr. Corsi, quick question on this topic of what to investigate and what to report. Earlier in the conversation before you came online, there was a concern about doxing or looking at the names of owners of various properties. And it brought up a really good point about, not coming to conclusion too quickly, not smearing somebody's name, not putting this venue in jeopardy. How do we know, or how do we evaluate exactly how to characterize it so that we get the investigation done, but we're also respectful of the rights of innocence, that we should be presuming everyone is innocent, right?
Well, and a good investigator presumes everybody's guilty. And I mean, you're basically, your basic fundamental Orient Express story, where they all had a reason to kill him, and they all stabbed him. Nobody knows for sure who killed the guy who died on the train. Truth was, through the night, they all came in, and each one of them stabbed him. That's Julius Caesar. Who killed Julius Caesar? Well, they all stabbed him. Nobody knew who killed him. Probably bled to death from all the wounds. How do you respect people in doing an investigation? Unfortunately, you have to do what we're doing, and we have to caution everybody to say, I'm not saying that Scalia was a pedophile. I'm not saying that this story is true. I'm saying it merits investigation. It's a narrative that we have to look at. And it's going to cause cognitive dissonance. It's going to cause people to be upset because it's uncomfortable. It's not what you want to think. It's going to change an idea you had if it were true. We don't yet know whether it's true. Basically, everybody is guilty until you get cleared from guilt. That's the key to an investigation. A key to investigation is getting cleared, and that takes a while. And most people in the situation don't understand that from the time the police show up, you're investigating. They're investigating. You're under suspicion. I mean, it's a true best way to handle these situations is to say, I'm happy to talk to you, but I'm going to get a lawyer. I'm not prepared to say a word. I have nothing to say at the moment. Because once you've said something, now you're on the record. And good police are going to come right in. They're going to try to get everything they can in the first 10 minutes before people shut up or start making up stories. And that's what they're going to do. Then they're going to lie to you. And then they're going to destroy evidence. That's how an investigation goes. First 10 minutes is your best shot at finding out. And with Scalia, in the first 10 minutes, nobody had access to what happened. And if we're going to comprehend and understand how the deep state operates, we're going to have to be prepared to go down these paths. because it's the only way you're going to figure out anything. It's the only way you're going to find out anything. So people say playing the devil's advocate is good for investigation. Yes, I mean, in a sense, you can call it devil's advocate. I just take it as I've come to the point in all the work I've done since I was a child, investigating something. I assume everybody's guilty of something, and I don't believe any of them, no matter what they said. I want to start seeing the evidence. I want to start evaluating the evidence. And I'm not going to accuse anybody. I'm not going to smear their names. I'm going to make it clear that, we're still investigating. Good police will say it's such and such a target. Everybody's a target, but until you're identified as a target, until the evidence builds up to such a point that now you're at what they would consider to be reasonable suspicion, a reasonable cause to believe, then now it's focusing. But that's going to happen after a bunch of people are cleared. In a Perot incident, when you read that novel, which is so brilliant about it, it was one of the best mystery novels probably ever, is that if Perot investigated, he couldn't clear anybody. That was, first he started saying, well, one person must have killed him, but how come I can't clear anybody? Well, because they all stabbed him in the middle of the night. He finally realizes they all did the murder. They were all guilty. They all had reason, and they all did it. People are quoting here Isaiah 64:6, but we are all as an unclean thing, and all righteousness are as filthy rags, and we all do fade as a leaf, and our iniquities, like the wind, have taken us. Well, that's in any situation you're investigating. The likelihood is that a lot of people did things they shouldn't have done. It doesn't mean they're all guilty. And your goal, and like we are with the shooting, is to figure out basically who was the culprit and how did the incident happen. But you won't get there until you discount a lot of other possibilities, and until you've got just incontrovertible evidence. And these school shootings are tough because they're chaotic. That's another principle I want to make sure everybody understands, and that is that eyewitnesses are almost totally worthless because everybody sees something a little bit different. And people's recollection of what they saw, the Kennedy assassination is classic. There were a few people that should have qualified as witnesses and should have been listened to. John Connolly was one. John Connolly had experience hunting. He recognized it as a gunshot immediately. John Connolly said he turned around, he saw Kennedy had a small bullet hole in the neck, and there was a bullet hole in the windshield, the front windshield, and he saw a dent in the chrome around the windshield. So he figured one shot missed him, the shot through the windshield hit Kennedy. As he was figuring that out, the next thing he knew, he got hit. And he said, that I knew it was a second bullet. Now, that's credible. It's credible because there's all that physical evidence is there. And it's credible because John Connolly had experience in gunshots, had experience with it. He knew now, does it mean that he was right? Maybe not, but you've got to register that this is evidence I'm now going to take seriously. I'm going to question him a few more times, see if the story holds together, see if the wife saw it the same way. Wife's not particularly credible because she's going to say what his husband said, most likely. But at any rate, I'm going to take it seriously. So, here, sounds like Scalia was drugged, taken to the ranch, killed, set up as a pedo. Family told to shut up, and proof of 187 would be destroyed. If they talk, Scalia's rep would be smeared as a kid raper. Got to take it into consideration. What's the evidence that he was drugged? What's the evidence he was set up? We don't know. But now we're already one step beyond the first step. The first step was he had a heart attack. Now we're trying to figure out if the kid who killed him was there because he was a lover or because he was set up. But we're past the heart attack now, because that heart attack scenario doesn't have much evidence supporting it. Okay, did they show you the photographs of he who will not be named that was in Montenegro? Somebody's at, that's kind of off topic. Maybe we can get back to that. I'm not sure I have seen the pictures. Yes, people posted here about the windshield and the Texas shooting. Okay, if we go back to Q now, and this one that was, who do you think is leaking the info? Take a wild guess. Okay, now, Q's next going to kind of let us into some more insight that he's got on this. He said, analyze the shooter, who was, by the way, just a pawn. Well, I mean, if the shooter was really the guy who was out there with a weapon and killing all these people, it's a little bit more than a pawn, kind of like a central actor. So what does Q mean that he's a pawn? Well, he said, voices in his head. Okay, now voices in his head sounds like if you've done a lot of reading on the MK Ultra, the whole point of the MK Ultra mind control was that you could condition the person through drugs and hypnosis, and they would hear voices in their head, and when the voice said, do this, that triggered the action. A word, a thought. You know, that's what the whole suspicion was of the polka dot woman in the polka dot dress standing next to Sirhan before he started shooting. She said something to him or touched him in a certain way, and then Sirhan triggered. So basically they're suggesting that this kid might have gone through some kind of conditioning, not just been disturbed, not just been given drugs, but might have gone through some conditioning. Now the next part, we know. Now remember, I'm saying one of the game changers here was the emergency decree that President Trump signed in December 21st, when last year, when he declared a national emergency, and that declaration around the serious human trafficking and corruption, that declaration means he could trigger the military. And I'm saying that the military, this Q is military intelligence. Military intelligence works with the NSA. The NSA is doing massive domestic surveillance, which they shouldn't be doing. But Q has now access to all of that information and everything that any intelligence agency has, because under Reynolds v. U.S., the military under national security declaration is in charge of all other intelligence agencies who must stand down to the orders of military intelligence. And Q's saying, we know what happened here. We know the situation, which is a big tip-off that the official narrative is complete nonsense, especially as played out by CNN, which appears now, in my mind, to be playing a CIA mockingbird role in this charade. And Q says, we're taking action behind the scenes, to drop a lot of information so that the public can be conditioned to understand that the official narrative was all nonsense. CNN was set up. See, again, my whole suspicion about CNN, and it's set up by the CIA to play out this charade. And Q says stupid. And, that's kind of, again, another indication to me Q is really an investigator's experience. He's been through this, because the final part of this, when you say stupid, it isn't so much that the people were stupid or that you're just disgusted with how stupid all this is. I mean, how stupid it was, So finally I investigate the guy who did the building burn down. And, we search his apartment, get a search warrant, search his apartment. We find some pliers and other things, and we were able to match it all to a cut in the wires. And we say, no, these are kind of interesting. Begin to realize that this was all a setup. he burned the building down for the insurance, beginning to be the reasonable hypothesis. And they say to the guy, you know, how stupid are you to think we wouldn't figure this out? You know, how stupid are you to think you weren't the first suspect? You know, how stupid were you to talk to us at all? We're not the ones who were stupid. You are. Thought you're so smart you could burn your building down, nobody figured it out. Well, I'll tell you something. We may be cops, but we're not dumb. We may be military intelligence. We're not idiots, and we're not going to be fooled here. So you better put the cuffs on them, take them down to the station. We're going to book them, hand them over to the prosecutors. We're done here. We'll see who's stupid in the final analysis. And Q, it means, is now getting much more serious. They're tired of the deep state running the narrative. They've had it. Trump's had it. He's had enough of Mueller. He's had enough of this nonsense. If all Mueller could produce is 13 crazy Russians posting on Facebook, and that's supposed to be Russian collusion that we're all going to worry about, is nonsense. Obama went to Israel with a team to beat Netanyahu, sent millions of dollars to Kenya to get Odinga to be president, flew to Great Britain, tell them to stay in Europe and the EU. We're going to worry about 12 nutty Russians. Trump's got to be sick. And then because that narrative, because the people were seeing through that and laughing at you guys, somebody in there decides to go kill 17 kids. I'm sick of this. We're done. We're finished. You're not going to kill any more kids. You're not going to get away with killing any more kids. We're finished with it. And Trump did what he needed to do. He changed the narrative. The only way to protect kids is to harden the targets. And if the teachers don't like to hear that they're going to have to, some of them carry, these teachers are all teachers union. They're all leftists anyway. They're all communists. I'm not sure I want them teaching this LGBT agenda to kindergarten kids. Trump's right. They don't need to be taking my kindergarten kid and telling them because of their inability to protect the school, my kid might get killed. My kindergarten kid said, "Daddy, did you know we might get killed at school?" I said, "No, I don't know. You're not going to get killed at that school because you're not going there anymore." And Trump's had it. And Q's had it. That's how I'm reading this. And, the Q follows that up by saying libel laws, end of the mainstream media. Well, they're going to now start coming after the mainstream media for these stories that are, running their mouths, this and that and another thing, making stuff up all the time. They'll put the mainstream media out of business now. The game has changed. We're in phase 2. Remember Trump saying yesterday, phase 2, and it isn't going to be pretty. You aren't going to like it. Phase 2. Now, as I said today, we're going to talk about some things that were going to be tougher because we're going into a new dimension of this. I want to look at some things over in the live chat and answer them and give everybody a chance to make some comments. Child trafficking, here's Donna Kelzer. And understand with the live chat, it goes so fast, and while we're talking, we do miss things over here, and I apologize on that. Danny Clark was the kid MS-13 who was then disposed after he murdered Scalia. Again, I don't know. All we know is that this is a story. I haven't seen anything that identified the kid. My guess is that if this is true, I don't know that it's true, the kid was probably killed subsequently. But again, we're at the very beginning of that investigation. Donna Keitzer says, child trafficking, pedos, organ harvesting, and Satanists. AR Energy, there's 10,000 sealed indictments coming down. Military-style tribunals coming. What we're getting to, yes, there are a lot of sealed indictments. I think many of them are MS-13. I think some of them are child trafficking. But I don't expect that. I suspect these are lower down in local investigations. I don't expect that there's 10,000, Hillary level indictments out there or big time invite. They're going to come, but we're not there yet. Okay, the pedo stuff is the blackmail. Again, we still don't know about if Podesta's killing might have been a decision to kill him. I mean, that's one of the reasons we've got to look at Podesta's Wetworks email, especially if it was in advance of the incident, or it may just have been an incident gone wrong. I mean, it's one of the aspects you find out about homosexual sex and pedophilia sex among men. It's rougher. It's got an element of SM to it sometimes, and it's got an element of rough aspects to it that the average person is not prepared to really comprehend or experience. So you just don't know. It could have gone wrong. Something could have happened. The kid might have felt abused somehow or other beyond what he was willing to put up with, and had it, and a switch went off. You don't know. We're not there yet, and people, it's always tempting to come to a conclusion, and good investigation learns not to do that. Stay away from conclusions. That's the whole point of, Mark Lane's famous book on the rush to judgment. A rush to judgment in criminal investigation is considered to be a defect. If you rush to judgment, you will not be considered a good investigator. The rabbit hole with Redondo, this David Schurter, we need to investigate this David Schurter because his name keeps coming up in relationship to this pedophilia activity, and there is a lot of this pedophilia, ranches, farms, Bohemian Groves type discussion. Same as the Lolita Island and that Jeffrey Epstein was running. So, these are known to be elite pedophile circles that the elite worldwide experience. And we know that it exists. We know that it combines and with a lot of the elite bizarre behavior. It's the blonde girl who heard the other shooter in protective custody. She really blew the clown script. I don't know where she is or what's happened to her. I know that we haven't heard very much about her. I saw the interview. I thought it was pretty interesting when she said that. Weren't there any CCTV cameras in the high school? Yeah, what happened to that footage? We don't see him. Well, someone's got to review that footage. What's it show? David Schurter wrote a book about his experiences called Down the Rabbit Hole. That's pretty interesting. I think we need to, MK Ultra. Yeah, the MK Ultra is all over this thing. MK Ultra is all over this thing. People are saying I'm going to get kicked off social media. I'm very careful not to state things that I can't prove, and except to state them very conditionally. And I have not said that the kids weren't killed. I think the kids were killed. I'm trying to figure out who killed them and how they were killed. That's legitimate. I don't think I'll be thrown off anything for asking that question. I don't think they'd want to answer why I was thrown off for just asking that question. If that's the only question I'm asking and I get thrown off, it's going to draw more attention to the question that I'm asking than they want drawn to it. What about the shooters being black op mercenaries? Remember the scene of the truck backed up to the building with two officers carrying out a big bag and loading it into the truck. I want to know, why were they carrying out that duffel bag and what was in it? Again, I don't know. Were they black op mercenaries? I don't know. First of all, the narrative is that this kid did all the shooting. And I'm saying, Nicholas Cruz if he did all the shooting, why did he go have a burger at McDonald's, and why was he arrested walking home leisurely? Doesn't sound to me like he was trying to get away from anything.
Actually, I have a comment on that. Being found at a place getting his soda and a burger. It's reminiscent of War Games, the way that character was captured. He was coming back from a place with that in hand. Is that not an image?
Possibly, but if you really study, people saying we'll never get the security cameras as mere citizens. No, but in an honest investigation, you'll be told what was on the camera, and I'm asking for an honest investigation. That's what Q is asking for it. If you don't understand what the psychology or the experience, if this guy Cruz was the shooter and he got out of that building, he's going to be pumping adrenaline so hard. He isn't thinking about anything. He's going to have a hard time thinking at all. People who are involved in violent incidences, if you see them, the best are pumping with it. The cops are pumping with adrenaline. They've just been trained to know what to do. They've been trained to take their weapon and put it right in the face of the guy, so he understands to stop. Everybody's pumping adrenaline. Nobody's thinking about eating hamburgers. Maybe half an hour afterwards, everybody's thinking about hamburgers. Not right at that moment. No camera footage for Seth Rich either. Well, again, if we dissect the Seth Rich incident the same way, we're going to come up with the same kinds of questions. And that's what I've been doing from the beginning. It didn't make any sense that Seth Rich was killed the way he was killed. And there was no evidence. We didn't get an investigation. We didn't get a report. A lot of that's been suppressed. Let's see. Someone, let's see. I'm just trying to pick up a few more out of here. They're moving quickly, so I'm trying to
Dr.
slow it down and read them. Yes, go ahead.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but we've had several people link us to a Sun Sentinel article linking the Broward sheriff with Roger Stone. I guess his election back in 2014. I didn't know if you knew anything about that or whether it's even fair to bring that up.
Oh, here with Roger Stone, this is the, let me take a look at the article.
I'll just link it again at the bottom.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, Roger Stone is tying Broward's highest ranking Democrat with a longtime Republican turned libertarian. The sheriff is a man of old-fashioned manners, rarely curses, okay. I don't know anything about this issue. I'd have to look into it.
It kind of reads like a hit piece to me anyway, but...
this is half of what's written about Roger Stone is such a hit piece, and then the rest of it, you have to dissect it. I'd have to ask Roger about it. I don't know anything about it one way or the other.
Yeah,
was Roger was he running for office, Roger, or what was he doing?
No, it sounded like he was supporting the sheriff during his election.
I just don't know anything about it, and I'm not sure. When was the article written?
August 16th, 2014.
Don't know anything about it. Don't know why Roger would support him or what the deal is. I'd have to investigate it. Don't know. Roger, has his own quirks, and who knows what he was thinking or doing or angling at that time. The article sounds like it's got a particular political bent to it, and I'd have to really look at it to see. I don't have an opinion on that right off without studying it. This other stuff I've been thinking about it all night. It was really, reading the Q posts as I did, just before I went to sleep. Here's the John Podesta email. I said, I am all in. Sounds like it will be a bad night. We all need to buckle up and double down. From John Podesta to Steve Elmendorf, and I don't know who that is. Didn't think wet works meant pool parties at the Vineyard. That's I'd have to see the whole. That doesn't look like the whole email to me. I'd like to see the whole one. And
I'll post it, Dr. C.
Yeah, I'd like to see the whole one. And
there was a follow-up email to this. If you go back into the stream, that's very worthy of being looked at. I'm still studying it, but it looks like one of his underlings, or at least one of the underlings underneath Hillary Clinton, contacted him immediately after this, and they had a 20-minute phone call. It sure would be nice if some of our Q friends could go back into the data pool and pull out the audio of that phone call. There's a timestamp on it, and you can look. It's a 20-minute timestamp.
I'm sure they'll have it if they want it. Why don't you post that email too? We'll take a look at both of those. My goal today was not so much to solve the Scalia murder or to solve what happened in the shooting, as it is to emphasize what I see Q doing in these posts, and that is Q is signaling how an investigation, that the issues we need to think about in doing the investigation. I mean, if we go back here to this 8/13, which is February 23rd, and it was at the 1829. So this would have been, 6:30 last night. The first part was all about the why school shootings. We kind of decoded that. And then the next part of it starts, why would locals go along with such a sick organized event? And meaning largely the, getting into it and saying we need gun control, and said they must control local police, school, county officials, etc. to work. Well, again, all of these, in this particular district that was picked, it's one of the most liberal districts, Broward County, in all of Florida. And so they could count on the local police, the school district, the county officials. They are all in the bag for Hillary. They wouldn't be voted in because it's a liberal district. And he said, why? Why would they all go along with it? And then he's got the dollar signs, and there's $17 signs. So he put the third part of it, of this, which is Q's pointing us to understand, the federal aid and donations. These people are sick. And he points us to this article on Sandy Hook 2 years ago, which shows how much money was obtained, how much of it went to the community organizations to do new hiring, new social workers, how much of it was even not yet spent, how much were being held by the organizations. I mean, these are big opportunities for everybody to make a lot of money. And the money in that community in Sandy Hook, and I suspect here in Florida, will all be spent on social work type of agendas. Follow the money. It's always about the money. So the narrative that comes out of this sick narrative, give up your guns, go to social work, trust in the police. Well, that's the narrative which you can get a lot of money, because all the left will give you lots of money for those themes, because they've all been conditioned to think it's a good idea to give up guns. That anybody who wants guns has to be a right-wing, Nazi, thinker, extreme right, not globalist, not New World Order, not Kumbaya, not understanding, we are one, not singing the Kumbaya songs that all the artists get up and say, we are one, and let's all feel together as one. No, I mean,
Corsi?
conservatives, I want to make one more point. Conservatives and those of us who, don't go along with the Kumbaya agenda, it's for one reason, and that is we've experienced evil, and we know there's evil, and we know you're not going to get evil gone by Kumbaya. You're going to get evil gone by hardening these targets and protecting the children. And if you want to tell your child they're going to be safe at school, well, A, you'd like to be there yourself with a weapon to protect the school. And B, if you can't be there, you want somebody there you can trust to protect the school, with the school sufficiently hardened that it's going to be very difficult to attack. Then at that point, when you're taking all the sufficient precautions and you send your kid to school, you've done everything you could reasonably do. You're not sending them off hoping that they're going into a kumbaya environment where everybody is peace and love and, flowers.
Dr. Corsi?
Yes.
So we have some more recent Q posts if you wanted to look at those, or we could also, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the CPAC thing, the president's speech in CPAC.
Yes, of course. I did listen to it. And of course, I think we covered that. I was talking about the sign where he held up the Q, and we saw the sign that we did cover that one. I think the only ones we haven't talked about, as I recall, are these up here at the top. And there's only really one of them I think is really important. I mean, there were a lot of sec tests being done. And if you look on the Q Research Board, there was a whole discussion here from Q Research where CodeMonkey came on. And CodeMonkey came on and said, CodeMonkey confirmed the problem. It seems to be working now. So CodeMonkey said there's no indication, because basically Q was asking with these sec tests, has 8chan been hacked? Has this been compromised? And QMonkey responded, there's no indication that 8chan has been hacked. Relatively heavy user traffic is starting to outgrow our server infrastructure. So we will be doing upgrades soon to alleviate the strain. Have a good night. Good evening, everyone. And he also said, I'm checking line 1183, which Q in these last emails asked specifically about, line 1183. So it seems to be a bug in 8chan's thumbnail generation process. Possibly the image you are uploading is corrupt or an unidentified format. Please try a different image format and see if it works. In the meantime, I'll work on the bug and try to fix it as soon as possible. When the issue is resolved, I'll make a reply noting the bug has been fixed in Q Research general thread. So these comms here where QMonkey was saying, started with sec test Q, sec test D3, RTLOG run -15Q, code check line 1183, embedded, added, 7:03 Eastern Standard Time is trying to embed some picture, embedded string active in SATR rec, warming alerts 5 to 12, brute force will be necessary, T2 warning. Well, at least in part, that's all referring to the technical problems Q is having posting, evidently an image. And a lot of these most recent ones here refer to those issues and CodeMonkey and Q communicating to try to work them out. Now, there was one other that occurred, which was about this Russian spy. He said, Stanislav Lunez, the bridge, payback for today. Now, that one we haven't decoded. And what meanings were you coming up with in that one?
Wasn't there an accident in Chicago where a chemical spill or something with a truck hitting a bridge?
Might be. I don't know. Does anyone have any information?
Dr. Corsi, I don't have information about that, but Stanislav Lunez is a contributor to CNN, and I posted a transcript that was from 2001, and it's pretty interesting talking about Cold War and spy activities.
Well, he was a KGB defector, wasn't he?
Yes, he was a KGB
Correct.
defector.
And now he's
And-
an MSM defector.
You mean he left? What do you mean MSM defector?
Sorry, I mean just that he actually is a contributor, so he's paid by, in some way, shape, or form, at least CNN, but I believe there's another. I'll find it.
Well, one of his famous warnings was about that the Russians had biological agents that they were going to pollute the Potomac with, the Potomac River, to cause everybody to be sick or die in Washington should there be a war with Russia. And that, when Q said watch the water, one of the issues was that, the water can be contaminated, and that he brought up this guy, Stanislav, again, made me immediately trigger the warning Stanislav had about the water. Now, the bridge, I don't know what the reference to the bridge is, whether there's a bridge that has there been a bridge in the news in the last little bit?
There was the movie The Bridge, and the movie was about defection.
The bridge was.
Dr.
I'm sorry.
Corsi, Trump drank that Fiji water with two hands. We're talking about this, water bio, and we've been waiting for this. This is something that, we're all been concerned about is, bioterrorism through our water supply. You can knock out an entire population. Do you think he could be referring to something like this?
Well, that's of course what Stanislav Luna was warning. That was one of his big warnings: biological agents in the Potomac. I mean, quite frankly, there's more fear of that than it's. Biological agents are very difficult to make work, and they're very difficult to make work in large water supplies. It would take a lot of skill and knowledge to really get a biological warning that could cause a major catastrophe. That doesn't mean it can't be done. But
Radioactive.
Well, you could do radioactive too. I mean, certainly this is one of the things we have to think about, because the water and LUNAV connect on biological threats to the water, because he specifically warned about that when he first defected.
Dr. Corsi.
Yes.
Yeah, there's another article besides this one that was just posted that talks about some, like a pedestrian bridge somewhere in Virginia where he used to make his information drops.
Okay, because the bridge was, the Bridge of Spies was the movie. That was about Gary Powers, and I don't think the bridge is the same. I don't think it's that reference, because yes, they did the exchange for the Russian spy across that bridge in Berlin, but I don't think it has a reference to Stanislav. This one here, because the Glen Nicky Bridge was a restricted border crossing between the Eastern Bloc and territory of the Western Bloc. Yeah, this is the Americans and the Soviets used it as exchange or capture spy during the Cold War. That's, yes, the Bridge of Spies. It could be a reference to that, but somehow it doesn't seem like that's specific enough to...
Yeah, but right. The other article said a specific place. It had the name of the bridge and the city in Virginia, and I'm not sure where that article went. It was in the live stream text earlier this morning, but it's gone up.
If someone can find it and repost it, that would be good.
Dr. Corsi, I had one other question. I'd kind of like to have your comment on it. It has to do with all of these events, and has to do with the Q posts, specifically about the narrative. This morning, since you've been on, about 8 times people have brought up the idea or the notion of the narrative being controlled. And one of the things that we see, it doesn't matter if it's Sandy Hook or if it's Las Vegas, or whether it's the shooting down in Florida recently, or the nightclub.
Yeah.
The narrative itself depends on, and it actually depends on a logical construction of control. And it seems like we need to have public visibility into that process somewhere, whether it's a grand jury that's dictated by the president that says, hey, this is one of these events and we're going to investigate. Something needs to happen where the light of day and the social contract can be reinforced to defeat this negative darkness that shrouds everything and no truth ever comes out.
Well, that's in fact what we're doing here. And that's what I think you're going to find. This develops into a major alternative source of news and discussion. Right now, the narrative with Operation Mockingbird and what the deep state, what the CIA has endeavored to do since its creation, is to control the narrative, the public narrative, for its own purposes. And its own purposes largely have been, they're running the drug business internationally. They are keeping the CIA in operation. They're globalists. The UN, the CIA, all these organizations were created by the globalists in the State Department, the Dulles brothers, who basically had this New World Order vision. And the whole idea of when an event happens, and we see it in these shootings right away, is that the government, with the mainstream media, rush in. They identify a shooter, and they've got a script. I mean, the script is pretty easy to figure out, and that is sole gunman, Reed Oswald, nutcase, Reed Oswald, irrational act, Reed Oswald, need to take the guns away, Reed Oswald. Even an old man like a Carcano can kill a lot of people, and President of the United States, Reed Oswald, take the guns away. I mean, this has been the narrative since the CIA committed an assassination in Guatemala. They figured out they could blame a patsy and create a narrative that would serve their purposes. And their narrative has been disarm the population, trust us. So every one of these shootings has in common some disturbed kid, most likely under analysis, taking drugs, gets a gun, warns everybody, nobody listens to him, goes into the school, shoots and kills a bunch of people irrationally. They all die. Everybody's sad, have all of the grief, national pouring out of grief, big plea to have gun control, and and investigation ends because shooter's dead and nobody needs to bring anybody to trial. This case, they forgot to kill the shooter. Forgot to kill this kid. And there's a lot of loose ends on this one, just like there's a lot of loose ends in the Mandalay Bay. The autopsy we have of Paddock said he died the next day. What's that all about? They missed a day. The coroner had the wrong calendar. Was looking at the wrong year. I don't think so. All these, when you get into them, and what the population needs to understand is that if the government says X, Y, Z, it's like everything else. You have to start by saying, why are they telling me this lie now? Which is where I start. Why is this lie? Why am I being told this lie now? No matter what the government says. Yes.
Well, and along those lines, and very similar to what Good Dog talked about, I guess the question is now that we have President Trump, why haven't we overturned some of these things? So when is the Mockingbird process going to end, and when are they going to end domestic propaganda?
Trump, I think, is in the process of wanting to do it. But the point is, and Q has said this repeatedly, he said you've got to lay the predicate. You've got to establish the basis for it. You've got to make it clear to the people what's going on. When people see how they've been lied to, they see what Operation Mockingbird is about and how it takes these incidents, and they're all alike and they're all molded with the same script. We're all lied to. They all got the same conclusion. Now people are asking the question you asked. We don't want to do this anymore. How can we stop being lied to? Okay, now, if I came out and said early on in this, we got to destroy the CIA because they're still running Operation Mockingbird, and they're lying to us, Q showed us what they do. In 1977, they came out and had Stanfield Turner tell Congress, oh, we ended Mockingbird 3 years ago. And then in 1996, Congress is still saying, why are you still employing journalists? And I said, oh, well, we don't really do that anymore. Of course they do. They never stopped. The wrong questions are always being asked. A question I pointed out to you, that they always ask the CIA, said, do you have journalists on your payroll? No, we don't do that. So I go to a journalist and said, are you in the payroll of the CIA? No, I'm not in the payroll. Well, do you get checks from the CIA? Oh yeah, I get checks from the CIA, but I'm not on the payroll. See, that they basically believe, the Pentagon believes, I think this is really, if they can control the narrative, if that's what they're doing, they alter your grasp on reality, so that when you're evaluating current events, you're seeing it through their lens, their eyes. In other words, this whole DARPA program, the whole MK Ultra, they shape your mind with stories. They shape your mind with narratives. They create events and shape your minds with them. Gulf of Tonkin. Oh, the North Vietnamese just attacked a U.S. ship. We better go to war. Better have a resolution that gives us powers to go to war that we can use for the next 20 years to bomb the hell out of everybody. Well, it turns out, if there was an incident, it was some little fishing boat or some, not an attack that was made into being an attack because Lyndon Johnson wanted a predicate on which he could get Congress to have a vote with everybody excited that we've been attacked. It's like getting excited about 13 Russians. These are the kinds of incidents when you really get to see them the way they are. It was why comics like Peter Sellers was so brilliant. When he did the movie, The Russians Are Coming. That movie, which was in the 50s, this submarine surfaces in New York Harbor. And it's these crazy group of people from a principality that nobody's ever heard of in Central Europe, and they come to surrender. They come to surrender because they want to be paid a foreign aid. So they figured out that if they lose a war to the United States, they can get all this money.
Can I ask you another question real quick?
Yeah, but I want to finish this for a second. The narratives here are important because Kennedy talked about the CIA. He wanted to break the CIA up. He was printing money for the Treasury. He wanted to do a lot of things that Trump wants to do. And it's why Trump is also going to have to be guarded, and military intelligence, I think, is on the job to do it. Kennedy didn't take the threats as seriously as he should have taken, and the CIA killed him in public. They did a crossfire assassination in public. They could have killed him easily in private. They did it in public so everybody'd see it. And then they covered it up. They blamed Lee Harvey Oswald. And with a situation that was impossible to have been done. And the mainstream media went along. These are deep state events. Other deep state events, that we've experienced in our lifetimes have the feel of that story doesn't fit together.
Dr. Corsi?
Yeah.
So looking backwards on the timeline for those in YouTube chat, think about the school shooting that initiated the gun grab in England.
Well, precisely. These are if you want to have gun grabs, you want the people to give up their guns, the deep state would happily kill a few kids. And because again, they look at us as sheep, our lives, they're not moral. They have no compunction. It's all manipulation. And this manipulation of the narrative, construction of the narrative, is critical. Now, what I'm hoping and what I'm going to be continuing to focus on is I'm going to focus on this. We've got a new judge in the case. Internet Bill of Rights. Yes, we've got to have an Internet Bill of Rights. We can't let Google, Facebook. CIA created Google. Google gives all the information they have to the NSA so they can profile us. We're living in a society, and this is where I continue to say that Snowden, and even Snowden, even Assange is easier to deal with. Very important information. I think Trump will get them both back. I'm still wondering who was extracted in the King building in Singapore, and wondering if that was Snowden.
I'm still
Don't know.
Who was extracted from the Atlanta airport?
That's another good question.
I was thinking that too.
Okay, so I mean, these are the, this new judge, I think caught on to it, and I think largely caught on because Q made sure he knew about it. Remember, the judge who was in the General Flynn's case was the same Judge Contreras, who was the FISA judge that gave the authority to the FBI and the DOJ to do electronic surveillance on Trump through Carter Page, with the FISA, with Fusion GPS lying memo being their evidence. Now, when you get to the new judge coming in, this judge was appointed by.
What is that?
I'm getting an echo.
Yep. Hang on.
Yeah, can you fix that?
Okay, go ahead.
The judge who came in was a judge appointed by George W. Bush. And this judge, on his own, sua sponte, by himself, gave an order to Mueller, which is hand over the exculpatory evidence to the defense and to the court. Now, this is the Brady rule. Under the Brady rule, the prosecution is compelled to share with the defense even information which would benefit the defense. But this guy Wiseman, who's a dirty cop, about as criminal as they come,
Right.
Has a history of violating the Brady rule and cutting corners to get convictions. And he's more interested in convictions than he is in justice. Sidney Powell, whom I know, wrote the book License to Lie on the DOJ activity in the Enron case, and she points out that the best thing any defense lawyer ever said about Weissman was that he was a madman. Well, so who did Flynn lie to in the FBI? He lied to Strozik. What did Strozik do? Strozik rewrote his 302, his summary of the interrogation.
Wow.
Okay, now,
yeah.
To make it look like he lied. And Comey, right after the interview occurred with Strozik, went to Congress, and Comey said a closed-door session. They came out and said, well, Comey didn't believe that Flynn lied. There wasn't any basis to prosecute him. But yet Wiseman charged him. Now, if that judge reverses the case, throws it out, and says to Flynn, you can undo your plea because we don't think that you were guilty, and so therefore this evidence exonerates you. If Flynn gets to walk, it's going to destroy Mueller's entire, because every one of Mueller's cases can be challenged on the same basis.
Right.
And I think that this is, again, if Q is dropping information about the Florida shooting and the judge is sua sponte asking for this to be produced, I'm concluding Q's gone into a new mode, and that is he's starting to drop the information needed to reverse deep state's lying narrative.
Dr. Corsi,
That's brilliant.
I had a question for you regarding one of President Trump's speeches yesterday. He mentioned the phrase common sense, and he did so 7 times. There's some significance to that.
Yeah, sure, it's a wink to the anonymous. It's what I've been saying. I said the second revolution will be done, Second American Revolution, which we're in, will be conducted by the anonymous, just as the first. And I always point to Thomas Paine, who wrote Common Sense under a pseudonym. It was a pamphlet. We are the modern pamphleteers.
And that's kind of where Farmer came from. I'm just the everyday, family guy here. And so, yeah.
And
And I believe that's where Pamphlet took his name from.
It is. Yep.
And that's in fact what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing Trump wink at with common sense. That and holding up the snake story so you could see Q on his paper. And Q was saying all day, listen to the speech, he's talking to you.
Dr. Corsi, what about him saying that he doesn't want to be controversial, so he won't use his name when talking about John McCain?
Well, again, that's Q always refers to McCain as the no-name senator. And,
exactly. There were lots of references.
And I'll tell you, there's two people who turned around pretty quickly, in my opinion. One is Chuck Schumer after he had that meeting with Trump. And we don't know what was said in the meeting, except that Q said he had to use the restroom before he left the White House. And right afterwards, Schumer turned around on DACA. He turned around and closing the government down. And the other one was John McCain. John McCain, loved voting. He loved destroying the ability to repeal Obamacare. Went over and did a congratulatory handshake with Chuck Schumer after Trump got finished with John McCain. I didn't hear very much from John McCain on the vote to do the tax cut. He seemed to run out of gas. And then Q published that photo from Vietnam of the airplanes taking off at the same time that McCain was there. I mean, Trump is very cagey, very brilliant guy. He understands real politics. He understands the world. And he understands Washington increasingly better. And as you do, you kind of come around to seeing it like I do. Then that is basically you bring Schumer in and you say, Chuck, this is something I hope we never have to share with the American public, but I'd just like to have you comment on it. And the picture, whatever you show them, so completely scares him to the very bones that you'd say, Chuck, I knew you'd agree with me. Nobody needs to see this picture. Thank you for coming over. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. And said, by the way, I think if you don't like that one, probably the rest of the file you think we shouldn't share either. Is that right? Now, that's the kind of thing that J. Edgar Hoover used to do, and Lyndon Johnson used to do it. But their purpose was they were deep state operatives, and they were doing that. The technique works, and if it's done by somebody of integrity like Trump,
right.
I mean, Trump is really unique in this regard. Trump doesn't need the job. Doesn't need the headache. He's not a professional politician. Didn't spend his life wanting to be president. And so a lot of things that motivate politicians don't make any difference to Trump. As far as Trump's concerned, White House is kind of a dump, rat-infested dump. I mean, certainly not like Mar-a-Lago. It's not the marble and gold and the luxury that's in every one of Trump's facilities. And he goes into the White House and lives in the White House, but I'm sure it's not particularly enjoyable to him. Somebody points out here in the live chat that why Contreras recused. Contreras was recused. The senior FISA judge, when she learned that Contreras was the judge who granted the electronic surveillance and the judge on General Flynn's case, said, you're out of here. You're done. Recuse yourself. You're finished. You've had somebody of integrity in that FISA court. Not many. It's largely a rubber stamp court. And I think they will be in the process of changing that soon when all this comes down. But see, the point is, you've got to set the predicate for it. You've got to show people. Now, if you come out and say, this is part of the problem with the Sandy Hook shooting, when people came out and said, oh, this was a hoax, the kids didn't really get killed, it came to all these conclusions, they hadn't developed the evidence. So it made them look like the kooks, and they were easily dismissed by the deep state and thrown off the social media and embarrassed. I'm doing it the exact opposite way. I'm not coming to any conclusions. I'm just asking questions. And I'm asking questions of pieces that don't, same way I would do it in a police setting. I mean, probably if anybody watched the Columbo shows, the old Columbo shows, Columbo did it as kind of an act, and it was pretty clever and kind of, but it was fundamentally the way a good detective would work. Listen to the stories and come back and say, no, but there was one thing about your story that I still don't understand, and that was this. And then and after enough of those, it was clear to everybody that the story didn't hold true. In fact, the Columbo shows usually started by showing you how the crime had been committed. And then the guy who commits the crime starts lying to Columbo. And the whole purpose of the show is to show you how Columbo works his way through that to expose the lies. And it's exactly the same way, you know, the best detectives will always play stupid. You know, I'm just a dumb cop. Where's my raincoat? I'm just a dumb cop. You know, I need a donut and need a hamburger. You know, that's always the way it is. But, you know, the point is, those are the most brilliant. Some of the most brilliant people I've met are law enforcement, and they're really good law enforcement, trained, honest, and know how, have had enough training and had enough good sense to be able to do this kind of investigation. It's not easy. It's not for everybody. I mean, you're going to encounter some evil that you didn't really want to see. And when you do, you got to restrain yourself, because you can't just, you know, beat them. You can't just let yourself, you've got to say, okay, I've done my job, and I'm handing you over now to the next team, prosecutors. And you got to be able to do that dispassionately. It's a very tough thing to do, because it's hard to keep your emotions from getting involved. Good investigators just don't have emotions on these things. It's like a doctor. You know, how does a physician tell a mother with 3 children that she's got cancer and going to die in 6 months? Well, it's not anything anybody wants to do, but after you've done it 1,000 times, after you realize it's your job to tell them the truth so that they can understand what decisions they have to make, you learn how to do it. But again, what Q is pointing out is, we're going into another phase of this. We're going into another phase in which Trump needs now to start laying down more cards on the table. And as he does, a few things are going to move and change. One is, these incidents like this shooting are not just going to get played by CNN having a big show and everybody says, take our guns away, please. And number 2, Mueller, if all he's got is 13 crazy Russians with a YouTube account, Mueller's done. And Mueller's going to have a choice. He can be investigated himself. He can start investigating the real criminals, Hillary and the others, and Obama, or he can just resign. And he'll be given that choice, not by Trump. But he better realize it's coming, because there's enough on Mueller, on the Uranium One, and on HSBC to put him away for a lot of years. Because what Mueller covered up in HSBC was it was the CIA running the money. And if he'd like to contest that with me, I got a bunch of people here who'd be happy to contest it with him. One of them's named John Cruz. So I think here, unless that's pretty much. I don't have fully figured out yet this Stanislav Lunez and the bridge. I think we'll probably be getting more on that today.
That's what I'm doing now, yeah. Do you have any idea why they would put that name and the word bridge in the same sentence, though? Could give me a clue?
There's got to be some connection with Lunez and Lunev and a bridge. Sometimes when Q drops these things, it takes a while to figure out where he's going. He's not always interested in us understanding it right off the first time.
Right.
I have a possibility.
What's that?
One of my direct messages was the Bridge of Spies.
No, we've looked at that. That's
Okay, I just came in, so
that's a bridge that was used to exchange prisoners. Gary Powers, the movie in which what's his name was in recently, The Bridge of Spies. Tom Hanks will use that bridge, and that's kind of a generic reference. I don't think it would refer to that bridge. I think there's somehow another bridge involved.
My history is not too good on this guy. Was he a said white hat? Who is this guy in your knowledge?
He's another confusing guy. He's a guy who defected from the KGB and came off with some pretty good information.
Okay.
But it's hard to know where he plays.
Where he stands, right.
He did show up with MS. One of the mainstream media were paying him to be a commentator. I mean, even if he may have had some information that was good. It may be his information about the poisoning of the Potomac, which
Corsi,
was, part of the plan. Yes.
Did you ever see a movie called The Eiger Sanction?
Yes, long time ago.
Watch it again. And now I'm going to point you at the bridge. In the beginning of the movie, one spy hands off to the other spy a false biotechnology microcapsule. And the whole purpose of the movie is the payback for the murder that then happens.
The part of it that's interesting. The part about it that I have thought, I forgot to go, payback for today. That came on February 24th. That was this morning at like 1, 2 in the morning. I think the payback for today, when I watched Gates have to come in and plead guilty and Mueller do that to Gates, I said to myself, watching and thinking about Q, and that'd be another, that's it. That's the last straw. I've had it. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done.
And then
Gates is was junior to Manafort in those deals with the Ukraine. He made money, but not nearly what Manafort made. He does not have a couple $1 million to defend himself. He's got 4 kids. He doesn't want to spend 10 years in prison with 4 kids and miss raising the kids. And
so what you're saying is he may cut a deal.
Well, he's prime, and Mueller forced him to cut a deal. Now, the only thing he's got is Manafort, and they don't need evidence against Manafort because they've got plenty of evidence against Manafort. But it's for crimes that were committed starting in 2006, 10 years before Trump ran for president. And this thing is a disgrace. Manafort would never have been under investigation, or Gates, had they not been a campaign manager, deputy campaign manager for Trump in the period of time they're trying to get the delegates put together in the primaries. And it's completely a deep state vengeance prosecution. And the whole thing is disgusting. And Mueller is not equally prosecuting Tony Podesta, who is right there shoulder to shoulder doing the same thing that Manafort was doing. And I'd be dialing up probably dialing him up right now saying, with what I'm about to say, that if this is what Mueller thinks is his job, Mueller better start thinking to himself how he'd like to spend the rest of his life in prison. Because there's a bunch of us out here that would be very happy to present the evidence. And just in case Mueller's listening, he might want to revisit the name Mark Rich. Could start there. Then he might want to explain to us what he was doing that little trip over to Moscow with the uranium sample. You know, that's not good enough for him. Maybe he'd like to explain exactly the different steps he was taking to make sure that the CIA never was investigated for running drugs, running terrorist money, for funneling weapons. And I guess these things were just a little bit out of his jurisdiction. So when he was FBI director, he didn't think he needed to pay any attention to these. And I guess malfeasance of duty is not really a crime. I guess I've read the law wrong. Happy to refuse. But after I saw Gates yesterday and thought about Q and read this Payback for Today, Gates has got a window here. He can make a choice. Be a nice time to resign. Nice time to pull up the cards and go home. I doubt he'll do it, but it would be a good time to do it before we get the full explanation of all the criminal acts taken within the FBI and the DOJ to underpin his prosecutions. And he might want to have Weissman think that private practice would be a better opportunity than ever being a prosecutor again. So I'm going to end with that for right now. We'll see if we get any more Q posts. But I'm sharing Q's emotion that everything is now at a new level, a new intensity. We're about to see these narratives collapse.
Phase 2.
And phase 2, we're in it. And this is now phase 2.
Dr. Corsi.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, we were discussing the 5 times that Trump said common sense in the speech.
Yes.
And at the end, we kind of cut it off a little bit. Somebody brought up that he was, at the very end of the speech, he referred to hereditary governance, and that is referenced in Thomas Paine's Common Sense pamphlet. And we've been, a couple of us been searching to see if there was any coding in that pamphlet versus the newspaper print. Do you have any access to those archived documents from the newspapers from Boston in that era?
Thank you.
Back to the
Or a website we could go to find good archives like that, I guess.
Well, I mean, there are original printings of Common Sense. They exist. The original printings of it do exist, and I'm sure you can find those archived on the Smithsonian International Archives sites.
I was looking for the newspapers.
Newspapers are usually the best archive in newspapers is the Library of Congress. They've got newspapers going back as far as they go, and that'd be one collection to look at and to see. I mean,
it was interesting.
Yes, go ahead.
It was interesting that Q said, "Watch the speech. We're directly communicating," and then he said that 5 times after we've already read the document online, and how there may be other. And then we had that infograph that was actually numbering the words. So learning comms, is there a correlation between the first Patriots and now?
Yes, I mean, I've been saying that the common reference, I've said it a dozen times, that this is the second revolution, and that this is the second revolution that we're in. And the first revolution was done by anonymous. The whole point was the same methodology. The pamphleteers, Thomas Paine, there were others. I mean, even the Federalist Papers were written initially anonymously. Understood that they had to build the predicate. They had to wake people up. It was a great awakening. and they had to get these issues in front of people. So people started arguing about them, talking about them in the taverns and the coffee shops, talking about them in their homes. It was all by pamphlets. And so today, this is the coffee shop, this is the tavern, this is the pamphleting, and it's the anonymous here and anonymous on Q Research, anonymous who are listening to all these broadcasts and who are thinking about these issues. This is the second revolution, and common sense is the nature of what the awakening is all about. And in a sense, when Thomas Paine chose common sense as his theme, what he was saying is basically, if you just open up your eyes and look around, the nonsense we're being told by the British, this narrative that we're being fed by the greatest state in the world, is all nonsense. And it's not the way they say it is. We came over here to have religious freedom. We're not going to have it under these guys. We didn't want to be taxed. We didn't want to be put under a king. So the whole common sense was, again, a return to the fundamental morals, the fundamental values of a Christian Judeo population that could be awakened. And we're doing the same thing right now. And Trump, throughout that speech, was referring to Q when he held up the paper, telling that story about the snake. That story about the snake is very important, because what he's trying to tell people is that if you're out here believing you should give up your guns and you think you're doing fine with these liberals and all the kumbaya, we love each other and diversity, and why don't we get all the artists together, we'll sing a song, we are the world, and you want to go down that path.
Adam and Eve probably felt the same way talking to the serpent.
At the end of it, the serpent bites you. Right. Okay, so Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden, forget God. God doesn't know. I know the good and evil. I'll show you good and evil. God doesn't know anything. Same with Marx. Same with all the communists. Until they take 20 or 30 million people and kill them in a collective. Uh-huh. And these same people who are urging, MSNBC and all these others, Geraldo. I wish they'd get rid of Geraldo. Sick of Geraldo. All these people come in and tell you how sanctimonious they are and how important it is to give up your weapons. They're the first the communists kill, because they
exactly
right.
And so the point is that it's the same message that Trump is delivering today, and Trump, in a sense, is acting like Thomas Paine as well, and Q is assisting. I'm trying to get the message to a larger group of people that can understand it, do more explanation of it, more decoding of it, taking the pieces apart. But the real revolution is the anonymous. That's, the Thomas Paine was the catalyst to the awakening. And that's why, this is all the Great Awakening. It's got to happen again. Got to realize that this official narrative, this deep state, has corrupted the Constitution, has corrupted our values, is not living the way we want to return to the Constitution, want to return to the republic that our founding fathers created. That's what this is all about. And so I think when Trump was doing the winking and all, it was really that simple.
Right. And I think, him using common sense so many times, it's not that he was putting Pamphlet in the spotlight, guys, and I think Pamphlet would agree with this. We've become great friends throughout this. He's saying that to you guys, to the anons. The common sense stuff is to you guys. When he says, that the farmer's got my back, that's to you guys, not to me. I mean, it's
not about us anyway. It's about
right.
It's about the republic, and it's not about any one person claiming credit, or it's not about that. And founding fathers, when they fought, it's the same thing that Q says. They fought all together, and they were going to either succeed all together, they were going to die all together.
And I guess when I say you guys, I mean we the people in general. Like, we have to help. Yeah.
was then not an ego thing. Most of the people who signed the Constitution or signed the Declaration of Independence, many of them lost everything, did not end up particularly well. But yet, the birth of freedom would not have occurred had they not caused the Great Awakening. Okay, now I'll catch up with you a little later today if I can. I'm not sure today, family day today, but yes.
I did find it was pointed out to me, we heard about it last night, but I posted it down below. It's a book by David Remnick named The Bridge, and it's about Obama's rise to power.
Well, that might be closer, but that bridge is the bridge in Selma, Alabama, where there was the shooting, and it was the big, big civil rights movement, and there was a big argument. Obama said something or other like Obama lied about that incident somehow or other. I have remembrance of him making something up about his father or whatever, and didn't fit, the dates didn't fit together, and the history didn't fit together. Obama had that tendency to lie and put himself at the center of the stage. He's like a Forrest Gump when it came to that. But most of everything Obama said was a lie anyway, so it's hard to dissect them all. I'll catch up with you all a little bit later. God bless.
Thanks, Dr. Corsi. Thank you.
Be safe, boss.
Top of the hour, somebody.